Excellencies, a critical component of this reform is enhancing representation within the Council. The Pact for the Future, which Africa helped last year in adopting in New York, that pact recognizes Africa as a special case in such considerations, given the historical injustices inflicted upon the continent through centuries of colonialism and exploitation. Africa was denied appropriate representation on the Security Council at its inception in 1945. That wrong was not corrected when the Council was expanded in 1965. We now have an opportunity to correct this course, to ensure that Africa assumes a more visible and influential role in the Council's work. The intergovernmental negotiations on Security Council reform has renewed momentum following the historic adoption of the Pact for the Future. Since assuming his functions as President of the Assembly, Mr. Young appointed the facilitator, the chair, to lead on the reform of the Security Council. And this facilitator or chair, who is the ambassador of Kuwait to the United Nations, frequently report to the President on the progress of his work. The negotiations are now focused on producing a consolidated model. To achieve that, a written proposal that clearly defines Africa's role on the Council must be presented. And it must be presented as soon as possible, because in the planning we have now in New York, at the end of this session, 79th session, it is the intention of the President of the General Assembly to issue a consolidated model reflecting the positions of all the regions and many other states and groups that have deposited their models. Africa is lagging, and the ball is in Africa's court to ensure that we can make progress in correcting the historical injustice. The chair, the permanent representative of Kuwait of the intergovernmental negotiation, cannot advance in the formulation of this model without Africa's input. And part of my duty here, as it was the case in Freetown a few weeks ago, is to encourage the C10, to thank the C10 for the exemplary work it has been carrying out, and to say that your president, President Young, who is the African president at the Assembly, is fully with you and supporting you. He is hopeful that action to advance Africa's representation on the Security Council will be taken before the 8th session of the General Assembly. Excellencies, progress depends on your leadership. As an African President of the General Assembly, Mr. Young Mr. Young has asked me to deliver a clear message on his behalf, and that message is this: seize this opportunity to agree on an African model, one that can be submitted to the membership as part of the intergovernmental negotiation, On this point, the President would like to relay several important points raised during the meeting with a committee of 10 ambassadors in New York in March. First, this is not solely Africa's burden to bear. All member states share the responsibility of correcting this historical injustice. And it is precisely for this reason that Mr. Yang has been meeting with many groups, with key member states, to ensure that the burden before Africa is not just Africa's burden, redressing the historical injustice. And second, greater clarity is needed on how others will support Africa in the context of the reform. The President of the General Assembly has heard these calls. Throughout the session, he has held informal discussions with African and other member states, including the L69, Uniting for Consensus, the Group of Four, and the permanent 5 members of the United Nations Security Council. As you know, even if the General Assembly agrees on a model, adopts a resolution for the reforms, if the 5 permanent members do not agree, they would veto it. And so it is important that reforms are backed by all 5 permanent members. And it is for this reason that the President has first met with each permanent member bilaterally and collectively to ensure that areas of divergences and more support is given to the Africa's case. A clear takeaway from this discussion is that the world is looking to Africa for a model, and Africa must assume its rightful leadership role in answering them. Just as was done with the Uzulwini Consensus and the Sealed Declaration, Africa must take up the pen to advance this process. Everybody in New York has heard you that you want 5 non-permanent seats and 2 permanent seats. You need to put that in writing and submit it. Exhibiting boldness, creativity, and flexibility. Submitting this model for reform places faith in the progress. I am here to listen to your recommendations on how the President can support you in this important endeavor. But let me say this. It is no longer a matter of the content of what Africa has to bring forth to the General Assembly. It is a matter of when and how. And the roadmap you've been discussing answers the when and how, and you are very much encouraged to do so. In our discussions with key member states in New York, one thing is clear. It takes time to turn things around. In fact, it's not a matter of years, because even now, the General Assembly can vote on a resolution for the admission of Africa into the Security Council. But the issue is, when can this happen in a manner that would have the full support? And so, in your strategy as C10, you need to leverage on paragraph 39C of the Pact for the Future, which recognizes this historical injustice, and say, yes, Since Africa's case is special, must Africa wait for the rest of the other groups that are looking to be admitted as permanent members in the Security Council, other parts of the world that want the same? Shouldn't a special case be treated in a special way? Only you, member states of this region, can push for this. A special case demands a special response. We all know that the many other groups, like the G4, their cases are very complex and might not come so easily nor so soon. Should Africa's case be hung on to that, to wait for the other cases to be ripe? Or should you, Africans, push for something on the basis of the special case you represent? You need to think about that. And one way of looking at things would be even at the level of the General Assembly. Since the world has given you the backing, even in the Pact for the Future, should Africa not ask for something special, even if it is one step to the full admission? Let me say that there are three pathways to the reforms of the Security Council. One is what I would call the situation where the reforms are engineered by the 5 permanent members. But we know that with the divisions amongst the 5 permanent members, this pathway is not likely to happen any soon. The second pathway is what I call below, meaning the momentum coming from the 188 member states to orchestrate reform. This is possible. It happens one in 1963, 65. This is how things happen. The 5 permanent members were pushed to the wall by the rest of the assembly, the rest of the 188. Is that something that is likely to be the pathway now? Another pathway is what I call external factors, meaning that a group outside of the United Nations, I can give the example of the G10, G20 rather. G20 is an influential, and there are many other groups that could orchestrate, bring forth something. We know, as an example, that the resolution on Ukraine, before it was even brought to the United Nations, was articulated by the G20. And so these three pathways are things that need to be borne in mind as you strategize and leverage with the influential groups. I would like to end here by, again, reiterating the support of the President of the General Assembly, who is ready and hopeful that the plans he has to issue a report by the end of this session should capture your work, a work that is onward towards an admission of Africa in the Security Council on a permanent basis, on the increase of its membership. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ivor Richard Fang, Chef de Cabinet OPGA, representing His Excellency, Mr. Philemon Young, President of the United Nations General Assembly. Let's give him a round of applause. And Allow me to also remind you, just in case you're joining us, I know that we are live on the national public broadcasters at NBC. For those that are joining us on TV, we are here at the official opening ceremony of the 13th ministerial meeting of the Committee of the 10 Heads of State and Government on the reforms of the United Nations. Perhaps I should say, please smile, you're on camera, to all those delegates that are here. I'm not seeing any smiles. Let's do this again. Smile, you're on camera. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Just a quick look into our program. We will have remarks that will be delivered by His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, and thereafter our guest of honor will deliver the keynote speech. The guest of honor is the Honorable Minister of Defense representing the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. Earlier on, when we started our program, we had remarks that were delivered by the Honorable Minister, Honorable Mulambo Haimbe. He is in charge of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation right here in Zambia. And in his remarks, he spoke of the fact that dear delegates, your presence here attests to your strong commitment to reforms of the Security Council. He reminded us that Africa is the only continent without representation at the UN Security Council and urged the sitting today to reflect on the milestones that have been scored so far while strategizing on the way forward as we come up with actionable recommendations of the common Africa position. We then heard from His Excellency Mr. Kaba, who called for a more functional and democratic UN Security Council and also insisted on just the importance of this common agenda that we have as a continent. And just after that, we heard from Mr. Richard Fang, Chef de Cabinet, representing His Excellency Mr. Philemon Yang, President of the United Nations General Assembly. In his remarks, he reminded us that we now have an opportunity to ensure that Africa takes its position with a written proposal that would define Africa's role in the Security Council. He reminded us also of where we're coming from, the fact that in 1945 Africa was not given a position and there was need to correct this historical stance or historical position. Thank you very much. I've been guided that the chairperson of the AU is represented by His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adiawo, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security. Thank you very much. Oh, round of applause. Thank you. We will move on with the program. Coming up soon will be the keynote speech that will be delivered on behalf of the President of the Republic of Zambia. But preceding that, ladies and gentlemen, we will have remarks that will be delivered by His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, represented by His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adiawo, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security. Round of applause.
Excellencies, representative of the President of the Republic of Zambia, Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Republic of Sierra Leone, representative of the President of the United Nations General Assembly, distinguished ministers, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Chairperson of the Commission, His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, I bring you very warm greetings from Addis Ababa. It is important that we continue to work together for the good of all of Africa. Given that a lot has been stated, I will be brief, and first permit me to join in commending the leadership of Sierra Leone and the hospitality of the government and people of this great country, Zambia. At the 26th session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government in Addis Ababa, 2016, late President of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, stated, and I quote, "The Security Council must be reformed. Africa must therefore fight a fight for our own identity, integrity, and personality." These were the words of late President Mugabe. It is therefore important that today, as we approach the 20th anniversary of the El Zuvinu Consensus, the African Union Commission wishes to highlight some fresh opportunities to serve as a common front for the C-10. In this stead, we commend the role of the A3 current membership of Algeria, Sierra Leone, and Somalia. We must recall the Oyala roadmap, which our leaders also fashioned out in this task. We must take our advocacy for UN Security Council reform to the African people. This year is the year that the African Union has placed justice for all Africans and people of African descent through reparations. It is part of that emphasis to correct the historical injustice. We believe that the C-10 should mobilize all Africans, including those in the diaspora and the global south, for this lofty agenda. The UN Security Council reform must be owned by all Africans. Another fresh opportunity happened yesterday when the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Republic of Liberia were both elected resoundingly to the UN Security Council as non-permanent members for 2026 and 2027. We congratulate them for this feat. We must promote intensive diplomatic campaign and lobbying while emphasizing two major global instruments of note: the new Agenda for Peace and the Pact for the Future, with its 56 action points. But my key message on behalf of the chairperson of the Commission today is to give you what we call the 5G. Not the 5G that propels the internet, our phone, but what Africa should stand on to demand a change in the UN Security Council. The first is global identity and representation. That is what late President Mugabe referred to in 2016. This identity must reflect our youth, our women, the diaspora, as we promote African peace, civilization in the international stage. The second is the global shared values of democracy, the rule of law, African solutions to African problems, silencing the guns. These are enshrined but of global acclaim. The third G is that we must be able to share global experiences and lessons learned, because Africa has been able to resolve some of its conflicts peacefully, and we can also sell that to the world. The fourth G is global action. Action as the representative of the UN Security Council, UN General Assembly President stated. We have to be able to mobilize all actors for the pathway he referred to. Finally, is global peace. It's a public good that we can all cherish. But I will leave you, Excellencies, with a pact for the future. Action 39. And it says clearly, we will reform the UN Security Council, recognizing the need to make it more representative, more inclusive, more transparent, more democratic, more efficient, more effective, and more accountable. Excellencies, this is all Africa is asking for. And we use this platform, your platform, the C10, to raise these resounding principles for all that Africa wants in a legitimate United Nations Security Council. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Those were remarks delivered on behalf of His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, delivered by His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security. I believe we can give him another round of applause. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now have the keynote speech delivered on behalf of the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, who is represented here by the Honorable Minister of Defense. Let's give him a round of applause and be upstanding as he comes through to deliver the keynote speech.
Thank you. Please take seats. I dare not say good morning because attempts by the Director of Programs drew a 0. Attempts by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Zambia, same. And the Foreign Affairs Minister, Sierra Leone, same. So I don't want to say good morning because you did not take your coffee. But I think I'll try. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. As has been said, I'm delivering this speech for and on behalf of the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, who unfortunately, you would have loved to be here, unfortunately is not able to be before us to deliver this keynote speech. Nevertheless, you have to bear with me. I'm representing him, and the word directly from So may I recognize the presence of Your Excellency, Haji Timoth Musa Kaba, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Republic of Sierra Leone and Chair of the Africa Union Ministerial Meeting of the Committee of 10. The Honorable Mlambo Haimbe, State Council, Member of Parliament, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Republic of Zambia, and co-chairperson of the 13th Ministerial Meeting. Distinguished Honorable Ministers of Foreign Affairs and heads of delegations, Honorable Ministers from the Republic of Zambia, my cabinet colleagues who are present here today, Ambassador Bankole Adioye, African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Binay, for the President of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I was trying to be a bit Frenchish, but I hope I got it right. Chef de cabinet. Very interesting language. Your Excellencies, permanent representatives, Permanent Secretary from the Republic of Zambia who are present here today, ambassadors and high commissioners present here today. Please allow me to also recognize our press, very, very important, the fourth estate. May I simply say, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As I said, I am delivering this speech on behalf of the President of the Republic of Zambia. He therefore wishes to warmly welcome you to Lusaka, Zambia, for the 13th Ministerial Meeting of the Committee of 10 African Union Heads of State and Government on the reforms of the United Nations Security Council. We express sincere appreciation to His Excellency Julius Manda Biao, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and coordinator of the African Union Heads of State and Government Committee of 10, for providing leadership in coordinating the common African position on the reforms of the United Nations Security Council. Your Excellencies, we are meeting here to come up with pathways of unlocking hurdles and to find ways and means of accelerating efforts towards the reform process of the United Nations Security Council, including amending the United Nations Charter and the use of the veto. The international community must address the historical injustices to our African continent. In addition, more than 60% of the matters before the Security Council relate to our continent, making it more imperative for Africa to be fairly represented. I have a legitimate demand for equitable representation and increased membership of the United Nations Security Council. Therefore, the voice of Africa must be heard. The United Nations Security Council must be reformed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, must happen now. Your Excellencies, the intergovernmental negotiations on the reform process have been ongoing for a long time without consensus. Despite the continued support for the common African position by many United Nations member states and interest groups, no meaningful progress has been achieved. This situation begs the question as to whether or not we are truly equals. The Pact of the Future that we recently adopted at the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly calls on all and affords us an opportunity to address existing inequalities through the reinvigoration of multilateralism. Your Excellencies, Africa's limited representation in the Security Council is a major factor in limiting the effectiveness of the African Union in resolving conflicts as well as maintaining peace on the continent. This is especially so in light of the heightened conflicts on the continent and the rapidly evolving global geopolitical and economic landscape. Despite these challenges, it's worth noting that the world is increasingly turning towards Africa, not just for its vast natural resources, but also for its youthful population. We must therefore start leveraging on these comparative advantages to pursue our collective goals. Your Excellencies, African countries need to continue being united and engaged with other interest groups with renewed vigor, especially with the 5 permanent representatives of the Security Council. We must build on our past successes to canvass for genuine support for the common African position as espoused in the Izulwini Consensus and the Cité Declaration. Our call for Africa to be treated as a special case in the United Nations Security Council reform process cannot be overemphasized. Your Excellencies, it is gratifying that our permanent representatives have come up with a roadmap and model as guided during the Committee of 10 summit held on the margins of the 38th session of the Assembly of the African Union. We believe that this will accelerate efforts towards the reforms. As you deliberate, remain mindful that Africans, especially the youth, have taken keen interest in the reform agenda of the United Nations as a whole and the Security Council in particular. Therefore, solidarity and unity of purpose are key if our dream to secure 2 permanent seats and 5 in the non-permanent category is to be realized. Your Excellencies, in conclusion, we reaffirm Zambia's unwavering commitment to the common African position. We need a United Nations that is equitable, truly representative, democratic, and capable of supporting international peace and security. Please allow me to now wish you a fruitful deliberations. Thank you for your attention.
Those were remarks delivered by the guest of honor, representing the President of the Republic of Zambia. Thank you very much for those remarks and for officiating the 13th ministerial meeting of the Committee of 10 Heads of State and Government on the reform of the United Nations Security Council. The opening ceremony, which has been attended by very key delegates representing different countries, members of the diplomatic corps, and different governments right here at the Mulungushi International Conference Center. Well, we are about to wind up with our morning program. Just a few announcements. Our delegation, the high table, will be invited for a photo session just in front of the banner right outside this room, after which we will be guided on some of the interactive sections, the interactive sessions that are coming up. We will begin with the closing prayer and end with the anthems that will include the Zambia National Anthem, the African Union Anthem, and the SADC Anthem, after which we will allow for a guest of honor to join us for a photo session. But perhaps with your permission, guest of honor, there was an exercise yesterday. The Honorable Minister treated us to a very, very beautiful welcome reception, and he encouraged the delegates to be interactive, to learn one or two things about each other's countries. And I learned something about the flag of Angola. It has a star which speaks into going into a brighter future. I believe this is exactly what we're doing here, going into a brighter future. But I know you've not had your coffee. You will have your coffee very soon, but perhaps I'd like you to just stand and greet somebody from another country in your own language. Okay, we'll just do that exercise in a minute in your own language, and just teach them your language. So I will go to